Joanna is in Florida. How do you feel about giving monthly donations to groups like World Vision while in baby step 2? I could definitely use the $33 a month towards debt, but I also feel like we made a commitment to help this child. Well, you need to pray through whether or not you have made a commitment or a contract. Are you committed to do this for the rest of your life? Is World Vision a perpetual commitment? No, it's not. And so you committed to you sponsored a child, but there's not a time frame on that, to my knowledge. And it's a wonderful thing to do, obviously, sponsor a child. The general guideline is this, and you can just pray and find what God's Spirit's telling you to do in the middle of this. But the general guideline is, for those of us that are evangelical Christians, our baseline for giving before we do anything else is the tithe, a tenth of our income, off the top before you do anything, going to the local church. And that's a standard evangelical belief and teaching for thousands of years, a couple thousand years anyway, and 1,500 years or so. And so, and it's modeled after an Old Testament guideline in Deuteronomy that says to give a tenth of your increase in Deuteronomy 28. And the Old Testament storehouse was where the widows, the orphans, and the Levites, who were the priests, were taken care of. It is the Old Testament version of the New Testament church. And so your local church should be taking care of widows and orphans and paying their preachers. That's what it amounts to. And that's what the tithe is to be used for. And that was reaffirmed by Christ in the New Testament. So if you're not an evangelical Christian, then this discussion does not apply. But the way you ask this, you ask it like a person of faith. So that's how I'm going to answer it. Okay? Never does God have you to give to gain his favor. He loves you whether you give or whether you don't give. He says give because it makes you into the kind of person I want you to be. I want to make you into a giver, God says. And he starts with that as a tithe. And he says to test him in this. Test me. It's the only time in the Bible God says test me. Other than that, testing God's probably a bad idea in the Bible. This is one time he says to do it in Malachi. So test him. Try it. A tenth. Then once you've done that, anything above the tithe in Scripture is considered an offering. And the tithe is off the top before you do anything. Offerings come from surplus all throughout Scripture. There's nowhere in Scripture that the offering above the tithe does not come from surplus. The only time that's even close to that is a description of the widow's mite. And, there's a whole lot of weird teaching around that, I can tell you. But anyway, there's nowhere in Scripture that God had people give above the tithe when they were broke. And so, all of that to say, the World Vision is an offering. It's not a tithe. And that would be from surplus. You have debt, you're broke. You don't have surplus. And so you're taking care of your own household first, so you're not worse than an unbeliever when you clean up your debts, so that you can be more generous later. Again, 10% is just the baseline. Our goal is to become wealthy so we can give away millions of dollars to help people, like little children that need food and that kind of stuff. And so, generally speaking, what I did and what I tell folks to do, not with a legalistic mindset and not with a prosperity gospel mindset, but just trying to follow the instructions in Scripture, is I'm going to tithe and not do any offerings until I get out of debt and build my emergency fund. And then as I start investing, I can do offerings and do a lot of other things above the tithe at that point. But at least tithe going through the first 3 baby steps. And after that, then you've taken care of your own household. You've laid a basic foundation for your household. Then the strength that you've built allows you to be gentle with others. It's very difficult to be gentle when you're weak. And giving is a type of gentleness. It's a type of compassion. And, you're that's why you're struggling with it. You're weak right now financially. It's like my 2-year-old granddaughter does not need to carry around my 8-week-old granddaughter. She's not got the strength to be gentle. She'd be staggering under the weight of that and might drop her on her little head. And that's the way this feels. It takes strength to be gentle. Not any problem at all for me to hold that 8-week-old, is it? But for that little toddler to hold that 8-week-old is difficult. So what we're trying to say is grow up financially so that your giving is done out of strength. And that's where I would tell you to do. But you can do either one. You can do whatever you want to do. And if God tells you to do something else, do something else. And this is not, I'm not mad at World Vision. It's nothing to do with that. This is just a teaching about how to separate your decisions about giving.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, click the subscribe button to get the latest content and check out these other great clips from the show.